Blog Talk Radio.
Will there be attacks against American bases in the Middle East if there's an airstrike?
You should expect everything. You should expect everything. Not necessarily true.
Je m'appelle Bon, Jean Bon.
Je m'appelle Jean Registre.
Alain Fini.
Jambon, j'enregistre, et à l'infini, ce n'est pas une farce. D'ailleurs, leurs parents ne l'ont même pas fait exprès.
American bases in the Middle East if there's an airstrike?
You should expect everything. You should expect everything. Not necessarily through the government. It's not only the governments are not the only player in this region. You have different parties, you have different factions, you have different ideology. You have everything in this region now. So you have to expect that.
Tell me what you mean by expect everything.
Expect every action.
Including chemical warfare?
That depends if the rebels or the terrorists in this region or any other group have it.
We held talks today with the Syrian Foreign Minister, Wahid Mo'alem, and they were already over when news came of John Kerry's speech in which he said that strikes on Syria could only be avoided if Damascus handed over all its chemical weapons to the international community.
Дамаск передаст все химическое оружие международному сообществу. Мы не знаем, согласятся ли на это в Сирии.
We don't know if Syria will agree to this, but if the establishment of international control over chemical weapons in that country would allow avoiding strikes, we will immediately start working with Damascus.
Включаемся в работу с Дамаском. И призываем сирийское руководство
and appeal to the Syrian government not only to agree to place the sites where chemical weapons are stored under international control,
под международный контроль, но и о его последующем.
Also for them to be subsequently destroyed, and also for them to fully join the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. We have already informed Syrian Foreign Minister of our proposal and hope for a quick and hopefully positive answer.
И рассчитываем на быстрый и, надеюсь, позитивный ответ.
This is the news in 10 from our international component, Bostonred on the World. This is Bostonred here on a day that has marked confusion in the American strategy to bombard Damascus, Syria. As you heard, parts of an excerpt from an interview with the American news commentator Charlie Rose, the President of Syria, Dr. Bashar al-Assad, commented briefly the consequences of a wider Mideast war. And that's on the heels of the Russian ambassador, and we'll get to that in a minute, Sergey. They're offering to have the international community oversee the chemical weapons of the Syrian armed forces, and as a path to the treaty on chemical weapons international treaty. But this is in an atmosphere of utter confusion, collapse, and what have you. In our opinion, the Secretary of State, Kerry, should be removed and replaced by Dennis Rodman. The Senator McCain remarked said that Kerry's remarks in London that intervention in Syria would be unbelievably, and this is Kerry's words, small. Called it unhelpful. In other words, the Secretary Kerry was talking about a minimal strike. And the unfortunate situation here, this is a waste of political time in the U.S. The President has made this a priority. This should have never been a priority of the U.S. government. This is an unfortunate situation, and it comes at a time when there are much more serious matters to take up. We have the matter in the U.S. of extension of the deficit. That's a full faith and credit of the United States of America. That must be handled properly. And then we have, of course, budgetary matters, a budget. It has to happen. The opposition party, the Republicans, are talking about closing down the government and defunding the national health care program known as Obamacare. And also gutting virtually all that is left of what is called the social net here. It's called food insecurity. That is a food program offered by the U.S. Could be cut by 30 or 40%, depending on to whom you talk. Now, this is an administration that has been rambling about. The polls do not show any support for this particular adventurism on the part of the president. Now, there are obviously pockets within the U.S. that support this, but those people are on an old-fashioned, I'm lost for words to say what they're on, but they are basically following the Wilsonian policy that was started by the American president Woodrow Wilson, which was a racist policy. Wilson was a racist. He segregated the workforce in the U.S. And this is what this war is about. Also today, the failed candidate in 2008, Hillary the Monster Clinton, former Secretary of State, came out in support of the Obama plan, which is military strikes against Syria. Now, the American people do not support this, and as we are looking into the Congress, the forces there are solidifying in opposition to it. Now, a latest survey here, this is conducted by the Pew Research Center. 64% of the American people do not support military strikes in Syria over use of alleged chemical weapons. The poll comes as the president, I'm reading here from the Al Jazeera report. It goes to 6 TV networks, a pre-taped thing. This will have no effect at all on the current situation. It will be a battle in the Congress, and in the U.S. we have 2 houses. The opposition party, the Republicans, control what is known as the House of Representatives, and the Democrats in the Senate. But there is strong opposition in the Senate also, and in the House it is doubtful today it will pass. Will it pass on Wednesday or Thursday? From where we sat here, it is doubtful. What has basically happened here is a repeating strategy that has happened. The foreign ministry of the Russian Republic has taken over this affair, make no mistake about it, through its foreign minister Sergey Lavrov. He urged the Syrian government to turn over control of the weapons to international control to avert the catastrophe that could happen here. If the establishment of international control over the chemical weapons in that country would allow averting of the strike, we'll immediately start working with Damascus. This is from the foreign minister Sergey Lavrov. The Syrian minister later said he welcomed the Russian call to put nuclear weapons on international control. Both ministers called for the UN weapon inspector to return to Syria to continue their probe into weapons use. The UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon said he is considering asking the Security Council demand Syria's transfer its nuclear stockpile to safe sites in Syria where they can be stored and later destroyed. The General Secretary Ban Ki said the Security Council suffers from embarrassing paralysis. It's not that the Security Council is suffering from paralysis. What is happening here is an outdated foreign policy on the part of the U.S. The Tory Prime Minister chimed in here, as we'd say in the U.S., to downplay the option as a distraction. Well, there is no distraction here. The American people deeply oppose this, And one Republican said that anyone in the House that voted for the Obama plan, Obama's war as we call it, should just pack up his House office, because the American people will vote that person out. There's no doubt about that. 70% of the Republican lawmakers oppose the strike. 53% of Democrats oppose it. Independents are also at 66% opposed to it. So this was a survey of roughly 1,500 people by a respected organization, the Pew Charity, a very respected polling organization. The president and his backers are facing a growing uphill battle. There is no doubt about that. You heard our earlier comments from Le Figaro. They also had an article here on a development out of Florida. George Zimmerman evidently is under investigation now for domestic abuse. We'll have it posted on our site. There, he's evidently following his profile. His wife has filed for divorce against him, and he has been on the move evidently for the last month. This is a leading story, and a story that will lead on our political program, Bostonred. We'll preview the race in New York. Over the weekend, it has tightened up. The leading candidate, a progressive named Bill de Blasio, is still in the lead, but his numbers are down. This is an election eve. Now, these polls are notoriously not as accurate usually, because according to this, is Quinnipiac University, 8% of Democratic voters are still undecided. That could pull any race. To avoid a runoff, Bill de Blasio must get 40% of the vote. Now, according to this, he has slid from 43, I've seen as high as 44%, to 39%. That's 1 point below. Continues to enjoy a substantial advantage over Bill Thompson. We're supporting Bill Thompson. He's a former controller, and he ran against the Mayor Bloomberg and almost won the race. Now, according to these numbers, he's at 25%. The City Council Speaker Quinn is at 18%. Now, the 8% are undecided, could move any of these numbers, specifically for Bill Thompson. Now, with Quinn, unless they are really in bad shape, they've got problems. So it's a situation here where this race is very, very fluid, and this race will continue to be fluid, and we'll report on this. The polls, of course, will open tomorrow at 7 a.m. Will open tomorrow. And these candidates will be out and about. Now, there will be a second round on the 1st of October. So that is for some U.S. Domestic news here. The big news is the Syrian situation and the Russian Foreign Ministry taking absolute control of this. Make no mistake about it. As far as the U.S. is concerned, it is deadlocked in the Congress, which now does not favor President Obama's action, and President Obama faces very serious repercussions if he fails in his effort. And also because of the support today given by Hillary the Monster Clinton, her 2016 presidential hopes have been dashed. There's no doubt about that. So this is the political background on which we see ourselves on this 9th day of September 2013. This is Bostonred reporting from the West. We are air here about 5:30 New York time. Good day.